Welcome back to another exciting episode of Ethan's Bought a Traxxas. If you saw the video on this thing, I basically just showed you what I built, and I didn't really go into how I built it. And then we went out and took this thing out with the Team Associated DR10, and we had a blast running these things. Spring is just around the corner, so it's time for Ethan to build his own. Now, we're going to show you how to build a super budget, cheap drag car. Something that pretty much resembles this. So this started life as a Bandit, the cheapest Traxxas that money could buy. And I turned it into this. Now Ethan is going to go above and beyond all that stuff because he's got to go faster than me. But we're going to show you how to get into a drag car for the least amount of money. And then Ethan's going to show you some upgrades that he's doing to make his better than mine. So before we get started, let's take a look at the things you're going to need. Number one, you're going to need a Traxxas Bandit. Now, a lot of people will build a dragster on the Slash platform, which is possible, but I have found that starting with a Bandit and converting it to a Traxxas low center of gravity chassis is cheaper and easier than starting with a low center of gravity chassis Slash and bolting all the Bandit bits onto it. So that's what we're going to do.
Mainly it's the price point is just the fact that this is cheaper than a Slash. So the Bandit parts is what you need if you would have a Slash already.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Aside from the Bandit, you will also need the Slash low center of gravity chassis. You're also going to need some drag wheels and tires. This flavor right here is from J Concepts. Proline, of course, makes their own flavor. You will need some 12mm hexes. You will also need these button head screws because some of the hardware won't transfer over. You need these guys. You will need the Proline body mounts to fit your new body. And that's pretty much all that you need aside from a body to bolt together a drag car. Let's get to it. Step 1, unbox your Bandit. You may be wondering why we would bother using a brushed Bandit over the Team Associated DR10 kit. While the kit is excellent value, it's worth mentioning that it doesn't come with any electronics that you need to actually do hectic burnouts and wheelies. If you have motors and ESC, servo, and radio system laying around, that's one thing. But if you're new to the hobby or you want to build something that isn't the same as any other RTR drag car that turns up at the bank parking lot at the weekends, this is the way to go. And being a Traxxas product, you won't have any trouble finding replacement parts or upgrades if you get chopped by a low-C. Next, it's time to start disassembling the Bandit. The brushed Bandit uses almost exclusively Phillips head screws, so you don't need any special hex drivers or worry about killing your fingers using those tiny little Allen wrenches on everything. It helps to have a screw container or a tray nearby to help separate and keep track of the different size screws. Remove the electronics and all the screws from the front of the chassis to separate the chassis from the bulkhead. Then do the same for the rear. Don't forget these two small screws at the top of the chassis, and then pull the whole thing apart. There it is. And here is the rear bulkhead. Now that you've got the front and rear disassembled, now comes the fun part where you can actually start doing drag car stuff. The fact about the Bandit does not use hexes. The drive pin on the axle actually fits into these wheels. So, you know, not really practical to use these on another vehicle, and you can't just bolt on any old wheels and tires onto a Bandit. That's why we got those hex adapters. At this point, you can start putting the front and rear bulkhead onto the new low center of gravity two-wheel drive Slash chassis. But since we've got it apart, now's a good time to do our first set of upgrades. We're replacing the factory bushings with bearings and installing a bigger pinion and smaller spur gear for maximum speed and nuclear meltdown temperatures. Look at that big chungus. Ethan paid actual money for this chassis decal that looks like fake money. He wants to be reminded of his financial mistakes every time he sends this thing tumbling end over end past the finish line. Use the same hardware to attach the rear bulkhead to the new chassis. So Ethan went ahead and removed these long Allen bolts that held the steering knuckles into the front top plate of the Bandit. Now that whole assembly is going to get reused on the Slash chassis, but we're actually going to use these posts and kind of flip the whole assembly upside down. So we're still using all the parts, but the whole thing just kind of gets flipped. So the servo gets flipped as well. So we replaced those long Allen screws with the short ones that come with the low center of gravity chassis. Those low center of gravity chassis. And we're screwing those in. As you can see, the whole assembly is pretty much flipped upside down. So the bottom is now the top, top's now the bottom. The servo got flipped upside down, and bing bam pow, the front is pretty much donezo. So those Allen head screws will actually fit into these holes right here, and that kind of stabilizes the whole assembly. Slide the servo wire through the slot in the chassis and snap the whole front and bottom plate into place. And here's where we use the 2 button head screws that we purchased. We're going to use these to attach the bottom plate of the low center of gravity chassis to the low center of gravity chassis. They go right there. Now Ethan is using the Bandit hardware to attach the front bulkhead and the front steering assembly to the new chassis. Now it's starting to look like a chassis again. Check that out. Now that you have something resembling a car again, it's time to install the body mounts. We totally messed this up by not installing the front mount before we attached the bulkhead to the chassis. The screws go in at this funky angle that just makes it really difficult to get an Allen wrench in there to tighten them up. The rear is super easy. Just use the included hardware to attach it to the shock towers and bam! You're ready to start fitting a body. We threw the wheels and tires on before gluing them, just to be sure we knew where the body would fit and look on the completed car before we adjusted the body post height. We'll glue the tires later. The body posts are a little long and actually interfere with the linkage in the rear, so we pulled out the Dremel and got to chopping. While Ethan was busy breaking all the safety rules with the Dremel, I got to work cleaning the tires with alcohol. This ensures a good bond between tire and rim, because losing a wheel halfway down the track is only funny when it's not your car. Use the tip of the bottle to slowly and carefully apply glue to the inside bead of the tire before tucking it inside the lip of the rim. The internet will tell you that you have to use tire glue or CA glue, but trust me, any old super glue will work. I recommend the cheap stuff. Ethan put on his wheelie bar because he anticipates hella launches, and it's time to take a look at what we've created. So there you have it. What do you think? We built this thing in the course of just a couple evenings. It always takes longer to film a build as opposed to just doing it. But you know, it's just a few hours to do this conversion. So this is going to be a great platform to improve upon and keep going faster and faster and faster. And Ethan gave it a test rip, and it's got spicy. It's got some beans to it. So these should all be somewhat evenly matched. We got a brushless system in the Team Associated, a brushed, really tall gearing system in the Cadillac here, and of course the completely stock setup in my Bandit. But when we ran these two, they were really, really close. So I'm interested to see what this does. I'm interested to see what this does compared to the two. So there you go, guys. Are you building your own drag car? Did you already build your own drag car? Do you want to build it? Let me know down below. And if you want to show me some of your builds, check me out on Instagram. If this is your first time checking out the channel, welcome. I'm glad you found it. We like to do RC shenanigans like this all the time. And we're definitely going to be doing some drag racing as soon as the weather allows it. All right, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Remember, getting old is mandatory. Growing up, it's optional. Laters.